it will upset Donald Trump. I think he will be very annoyed, to put it mildly, at that sort of thing. He doesn't take well to being mocked. And so he'll probably get angry. But as we have seen, Donald Trump angry is not a particularly effective way to recruit new supporters.
Nancy Pelosi, big moment tonight for her. Potentially, Elaine, the reason that this convention is happening in the form that it is. Somebody who has wielded a huge amount of power in the DNC and in the Democratic Party, over the last couple of months, and maybe is the person responsible for Joe Biden stepping aside.
She is primarily responsible, I would say, for that. There is one thing I learned about Nancy Pelosi in my years of covering her and doing the book, is that she is probably the best vote counter I have ever seen. She knows where the votes are. She knows where they're coming from. When she ran for majority whip, the number 3 position in the House, way back almost a quarter century ago, she knew down to almost the very last vote where they were. Everybody was predicting her opponent would win, and she won by the exact amount that she predicted. So what she saw now in the House of Representatives is that with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, it was very unlikely that the Democrats would take over the House again, despite a lot of the political wind blowing in their direction. And she felt that her precious House was in danger of continuing to be controlled by the Republicans. And she felt that the President, Joe Biden, was a drag on the ticket. And she wasn't about to let that happen, not on her watch.
Okay.
So she not so subtly pushed him out.
She's to be polite about it, as polite as it can be, she's not young. She's been in politics for a very long time. Do you think this is her final act? Maybe even tonight is her final act.
Well, she's actually older than Joe Biden is. So yeah she's 84. When she stepped aside after having been the first woman Speaker of the House, she felt it was time for a new generation to take over and said so. And I think that may have been some of what gave her credibility to ask him to step aside. I would never say never with her, but this may be the last big one for her.
How is she viewed in the country?
It depends on what part of the country you're in. In red states, she is viewed something as akin to the devil herself. In blue states, she is viewed as a very savvy, excellent politician and very determined to get what she wants, having risen from a childhood in Baltimore to San Francisco as an organizer. She is extremely good at getting what she wants. And the Democrats, most of them, up to the point where she kind of pushed Joe Biden out, most of them loved her. And I think if Kamala Harris does win, she'll be fine, the Democrats, for having to help shove Joe Biden aside. If Harris loses, there may continue to be a split in the Democratic Party over whether it was a good idea what she did.
Yeah.
I think she'll get a lot of applause tonight because the convention is sort of, bygones be bygones, and she will look good. She always does. She will give a good speech. She's not the world's best speaker, by the way. It took her a long time to learn to give even a decent speech, but I do think she will be well received tonight.
And she isn't, and actually, these conventions aren't always about this, Elaine, are they? But she isn't the kind of person who can reach across the aisle, is she going to change somebody's mind in America with her speech tonight?
I don't know about that, but she's extremely pragmatic. In 2018, when a lot of Democrats who were running for the House of Representatives were sort of keeping their distance from her, even though she was, high office holder and whatnot, they weren't using her in their fundraising or in their ads. And she kind of looked at them and said, look, just win, baby. That was her quote. Do what you have to do. Just win, baby. So she's very pragmatic and will do whatever it takes to get what she wants.
Bill Clinton also, Elaine, tonight. Again, a similar kind of person. I mean, obviously hugely famous, former president, but somebody who presumably comes with quite a bit of baggage.
Not presumably, he does. Uh, it was interesting because I was reading some things here today that was beginning to take Bill a little bit, out into the light. He's been kind of in the shadows for a while, and people looked at Hillary's speech the other night and said, gee, she did such a good job. There's such a kind of warm feeling for Hillary, even though, by a lot of measures, she blew it the last time around. And maybe it's time for Bill Clinton to come out into the daylight and use some of his charm. And believe me, he has plenty of that. Use some of his charm in targeted areas to remind wavering moderate Democrats that if they think Kamala Harris is too liberal, remember when he did it and he was a moderate, middle of the road, new Democrat, there's still some of that left. So it might be time for him to come out and be viewed by the general public, as it were, but very judiciously, I would say.
And presumably, though, Elaine, if you're trying to set yourself up, as the Democrats kind of are, despite being the current incumbents of the White House, as being the change option, Kamala Harris saying, we're not going back, obviously referencing Trump rather than the Clinton era, but wanting to be perceived as being a change in America. Having these people, we've had a roll call of people this last week who invoke everything that, who invoke everything that it is to be establishment America. At the top of American political life over the last couple of decades. It almost feels like there's a contradiction here. The people that we've been hearing from don't quite chime with the message that the Democrats and Kamala Harris in particular will be wanting to sell.
Yeah, you got to remember Bill Clinton's theme was hope and change. That was Obama, but he was, a small town boy from Hope, and he can do the change thing. I would not put that past him. Yes, he is a relic of the past, and yes, he too is old. But reminding people that things were pretty good under Bill Clinton, and he still has some influence in the party, might not be a bad thing. But as I said, very judiciously. You don't want to throw him out there to broad audiences.
Okay. Those kind of roll calls of the past included the Obamas last night, didn't we? Let's just hear again what happened. Firstly, when Michelle Obama gave a very well-received 20-minute speech, she delivered several takedowns of Donald Trump, including this one.
I want to know who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs.
In reference to something that Trump had said, a bit of a gaffe, really, from Trump a couple of weeks earlier about black jobs. Barack Obama delivered one of his most energised speeches in years. It was extraordinary, really, seeing him on stage doing it again, rolling back the years, wasn't he? Stepping back into the spotlight. The former president also took aim at Trump and his successor's obsession with crowd sizes.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
Barack Obama taking aim at Donald Trump. Elaine, it was interesting, really, because it wasn't quite as sort of cutting as his speech at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2011, but it felt almost reminiscent of that. Here you had Barack Obama mocking Donald Trump. Some people, Elaine, like to think that 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner, when Barack Obama gave a speech heavily mocking then businessman Donald Trump, media personality Donald Trump, was the moment that triggered Donald Trump to want to run, to get his own back for that moment, amongst lots of other things. And I just wondered, watching that, whether mockery was the right way to deal. It might be, but is mockery the right way to deal with Donald Trump? Does that not, presumably, harden feeling amongst some of those who may be inclined to support him?
It might, but I also think what it might do, and by the way, never has hand gesture brought such a raucous crowd to its feet before, or at a Democratic convention or a Republican one for that matter. But I think it will upset Donald Trump. I think he will be very annoyed, to put it mildly, at that sort of thing. He doesn't take well to being mocked. And so he'll probably get angry. But as we have seen, Donald Trump angry is not a particularly effective way to recruit new supporters into his camp. And with the polls showing that he is not gaining support among the moderate, middle of the road, undecided, very few of them that there are, voters, I'm thinking that mockery is not going to hurt the Democrats in the way that you were just mentioning. I think it's kind of getting them to laugh. It's going to make Trump very angry. But somebody, when he's very angry, is not necessarily methodical or strategic.
Okay. Elaine, lovely to have your company tonight. Thank you so much. Elaine Povich, who is a biographer of Pelosi and in her own right, an award-winning Washington correspondent and former media editor.